A streak of shimmering blue marks out the Lake Victoria on the horizon. It's a vast cavity of majestic beauty, sprawled out and brushing up against undisturbed hills. The fractal fingers of its shorelines shelter the bays and the inlets, and small islands dot the open waters. This was the cradle of aquatic civilization dating back thousands of years, and their descendants still populate the lake shores, trying to make a livelihood as their ancestors did. But much has changed. The Lake Victoria was once a source of purity and life for the teeming hundreds who depended on it. But so it was in those days, years ago, until a blight crept up on the waters. Now the lake is a receptacle of filth. We're here to investigate the crisis lurking in the deep, just how sullied, despite appearance, the water is, and the human cost of that contamination. With the help of scientists from the University of Nairobi's Department of Public Health and Toxicology, and collecting samples from the lake shores in Muhuru Bay to Jinja, where the Nile begins its journey to the Mediterranean Sea, we set out to find out how man's poison has weakened the pulse of East Africa's blue heart. At every first light, a flock of birds swoop into the shallows on the lake's shorelines in search of breakfast, fishing for scraps while fending off competition. It's nature's cruel metaphor for a community's uneasy dance with fate. Local fishermen like Michael Otieno have a harder time finding anything at all.
Hapo mbeleni tulikuwa iko na mapato, kwa maana tulikuwa tunaweka nyavu karibu, lakini tunapata samaki wengi tunauza hapa. Sasa inalazima sisi tuchukue boat tuende mbali kabisa, ndio tuende tupate hiyo maji safi, ndio tuweke nyavu zetu. Hapo ndio tuanze kupata samaki. Tunaenda vitu kama 3 hours ndio tufike mahali kuna net. Unajua tuna time na upepo pia. Upepo kianza kuvuma mapema, sasa tuendi huko, tunawacha.
The degraded quality of the lake's waters has made it that much harder for fish to breed. Now the talk of fishermen who ply the inshore bays is scarcity.
Sasa hiyo nikienda kutafuta kazi ya kuanza inabidi niende huko. Nikwenda kupata hata kidogo hata 3 hivi. Unajua hiyo 3 saa nyingine ni moja. Kama hapa tunauza mbuta kwa kilo moja shilingi 300. Unajua sasa ni samaki 3. Ambayo ni mbuta sasa kilo 6. Sasa nikipiga na hiyo pesa hii pa hivi. Niende na hii. Unaweza hii inabidi lazima tutumie samaki net mingi sana kutoka hapa hadi huko ndio tupate hata samaki hiyo 3 kilo 50. Kilo 20 nitategemea na upepo, lakini kwa nyavu kidogo. Na sasa hivi ndio tunatumia nyavu mingi sana. Sasa hii ikipaka mingi sana 15.
And as such, the crumbling trappings of a way of life lie in plain sight. The most cherished fish, the tastiest, and the most valuable have disappeared.
My name is Tom Guda. Tom Guda is the National Chairman for Beach Management Units in Kenya. It is not good enough now that the lake is very dirty and the shoreline is also very muddy. So fish like tilapia cannot find room to breed because they need shallow, sandy, sheltered bays to breed. So with that, without breeding, then no restocking. So let's fish. Let's fish. So what we have now in the Gulf is kamongo, the langfish. So when you find kamongo, the langfish, like what I've told you, you only find it where it is dirty. Now we have lost labeuningo. We have lost fuane. Those are the local names for them. We have lost mbiru. We have lost so much species of fish. In fact, if you asked the people that used to fish before we came, they will tell you they have lost over 20 species of fish.
The Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute has been studying the lake. The problems anchored in the water and their effect on the lake's fish stocks.
I'm Christopher Aura, Assistant Director Freshwater Systems Research, and also the Center Director, Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, Kisumu. Now, as ChemFree, we undertake research involving water and the fauna. The health of the lake, as I would say, it's in a deteriorating state. And of course, from a layman point of view, you can look at the water transparent, the way the water is looking. From the water color will tell you what is the status of the lake at that point. Yes. In the years 2000, we used to have about 2,000 tons of fish, or it was in the neighborhood of 169,000 tons. But we have had a 28% decline of fish catch. And right now, on average, we are having about 115,000 tons of fish.
Their research helps explain why the lake's native bounty, including the much sought-after tilapia, known locally as ngege, has been dying out, and how man's hand wrote their doom.
We are seeing more of tilapia being affected when we are talking about invasive species, water pollution, among others. And as you understand, tilapia is the most important cherished delicacy because of its taste and because of just culture. What I may say more so, tilapia is affected than the rest of the fish species.
It's in part a fish-eat-fish story. The introduction of the exotic Nile perch, also known as mbuta, unexpectedly ravaged the schools of the indigenous fish. A voracious predator, it feeds on much smaller fish and has been blamed for tilapia's decline. But while the Nile perch may have only rendered the coup de grace, the lake is dying, and the humans, much more than the perch, are the villains. Here in the tropics, lakes are as imperiled as forests, and Lake Victoria is the one in deepest peril. Named after England's Queen Victoria, the view here is neither uplifting or imposing. Hints of its heydays now litter the shorelines, rusting boats wedged deep in the mud, the abandoned piers, the testaments of a bygone era. The beaches, once filled with visitors, are now deserted and withered wastelands. It's hard to imagine that before the age of modern progress, the community drank and lived off this poisonous cesspool. But this transformation from paradise to purgatory has unfolded before Patricia Odongo's very eyes.
Nakuja hapa 77. Napata kama maji iko kama maji ya friji. Na mchanga tu inaonekana mchanga safi. na samaki inakuja paka nje. 77 ilikuwa samaki nyingi kabisa, kwa maana maji ilikuwa safi, na siku hizi hakuna samaki because of dirty of water. So wanawachaga tu nyavu iko ndani huko. Wanaweka saa 9 jioni, wanarudia kuenda kuleta asubuhi. Alafu wanaweza kurudi hata na samaki 2, 3. Hakuna penye watasika, kwa maana samaki hakuna. Chafu iko, takataka yote kwa maji, kringeti yote kwa maji.
Usoma Beach, where she holds out a living, sits on the margins of Kisumu, a city of about 750,000 people, according to the 2019 census. The lake is the soul of the city, providing water and food. But the city casts a large shadow over the lake and its future. The people have been sucking the life out of it.
This heritage that God gave us in terms of Lake Victoria, how are we looking after it? And to what extent can we safeguard it for the future? You remember the biblical story, the man who gave some of his servants different talents. We were given this lake, the second biggest freshwater lake in the world, and we are just not looking after it properly. When God comes and says, "Where is my lake?" you say, "Here it is."
Industrial pollution, untreated sewage, and the still widespread practice of open defecation have made this stretch of the lake a toxic soup, teeming with evil.
By the look of it looks like we have very high algae. It's known that green algae would actually be resulting from very high nitrogen levels and phosphorus, which essentially would be coming from organic waste. And organic waste, of course, would be generated from human activities as untreated sewer being discharged to the water bodies. So we'll test the water for microbial contamination that, of course, will be coming from sewer, untreated sewer or directed discharge, and chemical waste that may be coming from industries.
We took samples on the lake along the industrial stretch that houses Equator Bottles, the franchised bottlers of Coca-Cola in Kisumu, to the Kenya Pipeline Company next to the ruins of the once vibrant Kisumu Beach Resort.
You see, if you look at this is what we are saying, that we have the green blue algae, right? The blue green algae is toxic. It's cyanobacteria.
We pick the water and test it at that level, but we'll move a little bit deeper and pick the sediments. Now, sediments will help us to look at the over a longer time because it will accumulate. These chemicals will accumulate in the sediments. So when we take sediments, we're able to pick a better picture of what has been happening over time. We are also picking aquatic animals. And in fish, the most important thing we test are the chemicals, because fish are known to accumulate chemicals. And when we say this, we are thinking of things like mercury, things like cadmium, things like chromium. They are heavy metals and they may not be there. And a fish will not die when they consume that. And then now when humans feed on that, then that's where the problem comes in.
Well, a whole lot of problems is what River Kisat brings into the lake. Indeed, the river is troubled from source. A swamp east of Kisumu that has now been cleared to make way for maize and sorghum fields to the mouth, where it drains its grime into the lake. As it courses along through the Obunga slums, River Kisat drags along a concoction of filth. The slum lacks sanitation facilities. Here, the river mingles with the sewage from the settlements, and the end result is grimy and lethal.
If you don't have the basic requirements in excreta containment, and it is allowed to be discharged into the water bodies outside your house, at the end of the day, that is carried to a bigger stream somewhere and to a bigger river that ends up into the lake where we are getting our food from.
Further downstream, the river meets another slimy flow, an evil-looking black from the city's water treatment plant, run by the Kisumu Water and Sewerage Company, Kiwasco. There's been few improvements on the now 8,000 cubic meter capacity plant since the colonial days. Built in the 1950s, the Kisumu Water Treatment Plant serves most of Kisumu, taking in its filth, cleansing it, and releasing what it considers to be an untarnished stream back to the environment.
I'm very satisfied and confident that what we release back to the lake meets the regulatory standards. You've seen we have a very modern lab up there where whatever comes in, whatever goes out is taken to the lab, and we look at all the parameters. And I'll tell you that 99% of the times we normally meet the effluent standards that is released back to the lake. Our effluent actually dilutes the polluted river, so it makes it better.
From the look of it, of course, the water is colored. Of course, the brown is because of silting. Because of the rains, there's a lot of erosion that takes place. The brackish is, of course, from the treatment plant. And then, of course, you know, they're treating sewage. We could pick the color, we could pick the smell. That's a level of contamination. And that is both from the company treatment discharge site and also another site in above the golf club. I think there is a discharge for our factories at that point, of course. And we could see the silting, the black silting, that would highly suggest chemical contamination.
The poisonous discharge from the plant calls into question its capacity to treat the city's filth or even the water it abstracts from the same foul lake to a level safe enough for domestic consumption.
I mean, these are the things that annoys me, you know, because Kiwasco is our company. And sitting on the board of Kiwasco is the Minister for Finance, the Minister for Water and Environment, and the city manager. And, but I guess that these individuals are so overwhelmed with so much work. And we actually need somebody who is not just a minister. We need people who know something scientifically about environment.
But Kiwasco says it's not the only one to blame for the toxic flow into the environment.
So it is at this plant where we receive both the domestic waste and industrial waste. As you know, industrial waste, we expect that it is pre-treated so that it meets certain standards, NEMA standards, before it's brought for us for further treatment. All the influent that comes, we actually take to the lab to measure those parameters, whether they meet the standards or not. And if they don't meet, we quickly talk to the industries to take corrective action. And of course, when you do that, we also liaise with the regulatory bodies. We liaise with NEMA, we liaise with the Water Resources Authority as well.
Secondary sedimentation, then this is our discharge effluent.
According to their analysis of the waste from industries for the period between the 17th of October 2018 and the 21st of October 2019, The waste from 4 industries ran afoul of NEMA's guidelines on discharge into public sewers, having failed some aspects of their physiochemical tests. This, they say, tested their capacity to effectively treat the waste.
Whatever's coming, in most of the times we are able to treat it, but it stresses our system. So we normally do frequent tests just to ensure that we get the quality of what comes in right. And if it is not right, then we ask the industries to take corrective action. If they don't, then we block their sewer system.
Equator Bottlers, the franchised bottlers of Coca-Cola in Kisumu, was one of those flagged. The company, however, says its waste treatment protocols are beyond reproach. In a statement, Coca-Cola says the effluent is taken through various rigorous stages before discharge. The effluent is also tested regularly in their own labs and in other accredited labs externally to ensure it complies with both local and international standards. The bottler says they recently had discussions with Kiwasco, where they agreed on common sampling protocols on the effluent so as to come up with a consistent point of reference as well as take corrective actions when necessary. According to a report by the National Environment Management Authority for the month of December, a team of inspectors from the regulator, the Water Resources Authority, the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute and Kiwasco investigated allegations that the company was discharging effluent directly to the lake. The team concluded that the 2 pipes connected to the lake were only used to abstract water from the lake, one an old line and another currently in use. The team ordered the firm to decommission the old line to dispel any pollution concerns.
Daktari, what do you think about this?
Kiwasco also flagged the waste from the Kenya Breweries Limited. But the brewer discounts Kiwasco's assertions. KBL says none of what they submit to the city's treatment plant has been flagged since 2018. The brewer further says the Kisumu plant treats all its waste and ensures it meets the requirements for discharge into the sewer line, analyzing the effluent 4 times a day in their own lab, and takes corrective measures if the results vary from the accepted standards. Also of concern was the waste from the East Africa Seafood Limited, a company that processes Nile perch from the lake for export and imports tilapia and other fish from China, and Kibos Sugar. For Kibos Sugar and allied industries, their vision to be the home of simple sweetness and the reality seem to flow in different directions. Relations between the company and locals have simply soured over the future of River Kibos. Yet another stream that snakes past the industry on its way to the Lake Victoria. The river is a pool of dead water, emptiness and toxins, and locals say the industry is responsible.
Tumeshaongea na huyu muhindi kuhusu hii maji na aski. Uchafu inatoka hapa, huko nyuma na pale huko distillery. Watu wanasikia harufu mbaya sana. Uchafu, ani vitu zenye zinakuwa kama grease hivi. Vitu mbaya, ma chemicals. Kwanza saa hizi hatukunywi hata hii maji. Tumbo iliniuma sana. Nikaenda OC wakanipata na typhoid. Sasa yenye wanamwaga hizo maji, hatuingii hata hapo kwa maji. Samaki pia kuna chemical ingine yenye hii nini inatoa, hii sugar inatoa. Wakimwaga maji, samaki yenye yuko hapo nakufa yote. Kama mvua imeanza, ndio wanaanzia hiyo kumwaga maji.
If going to the river, we must go undercover. This I took before going to court. This is the river. This is the factory.
At the outset, Benson Ambuti Adega cuts the image of a firebrand revolutionary. He is leading the crusade to save Kibos River from the alleged pollution by Kibos Sugar Company.
Are we going there? Unaweza katwa.
At times, he claims, at great risk to his own life.
You can't use that water. That water is smelling. Can you even wash your hand with the smelling water? I was born in this area. We used to take that water directly from the river. We do grazing with the same water. Right now we can't use it. We depend on the pipe water, which sometimes it bursts. You can't access it. That is our life.
He and 2 others filed a civil suit at the Environment and Land Court in Kisumu against the Kibos Industries for failing to comply with NEMA regulations on effluent discharge, and against the National Environment Management Authority and the county government of Kisumu for failing to stop the company's operations.
They don't represent the community. We had been crying no one to come out. So I decided, as a man, with a single hand, I talked to my legal team. I talked to them, they are doing for me pro bono petition. This is a matter of life and death. If we can't protect our environment, we don't have future generation. And this is where the cancer is coming from. I think our people are seeing this thing. Cancer is all over. People are dying because of cancer. The cause is this pollution. We are not against any investor in our community. We are happy with the investment, but they have to follow the right procedure.
Kibos Sugar maintains its operating procedures are stainless.
Kibos is very careful when it comes to environmental management. Whatever waste we produce from one industry enters into the other industry as a raw material to add value. NEMA has given us 95 to 100% compliance. That is why we are still in operation. If indeed we were polluting, NEMA would not allow us to operate. Once or twice we have had an accident, which we reported to NEMA. We have a compliance plan, which we are working together with NEMA to ensure that nothing goes out, nothing that is going to be of negative impact to the environment.
That is the final product. Open the top.
In July of last year, the Environment Court handed the community what they saw as a sweet victory. The court ordered the company's closure. It also found that the sugar miller and 2 of its subsidiaries had obtained their licenses illegally. But Kibos moved to the Court of Appeal. A ruling by a 3-judge bench that was expected on the 19th of December was deferred after one of the judges, Professor Justice James Otieno Odek, was found dead in his Kisumu apartment on the 16th of December. The Court of Appeal on the 31st of January dismissed the decision of the High Court, saying there was no evidence that the firm was polluting the environment or that the residents had suffered any damages as a result of the pollution.
I'll deal with this thing to the end. Whether it will take my life, but I will save the life of our future generation. And I'll fight this war to the highest court in the land. So long as the Constitution is protecting me, I'm happy.
We welcome anybody who wants to see what we are doing. We welcome you to take samples. NEMA takes samples themselves.
We took samples of the effluent from the factory to find out for ourselves what is veiled in the troubled waters. The results were unsettling. But it's not just in Kajulu location where something pungent has been festering. Residents of Otonglo in Kisumu say the prison in their community has shackled them to years of torment. It's a confine they can't seem to break out of. The lines on Rasco Olilo's face are perhaps an impression of the very fine line between the hope and despair that the community now walks. Rasco Olilo remembers when the waters of the Saka stream winding past their homes was crystal. Now it's been sullied by a revolting discharge from the Kodiaga prison.
Hii mto inaitwa Sakaler. Sakaler maana yake ati hii maji ilikuwa maji safi. Tumetumia hii mwaka nyingi sana. Mimi nimezaliwa nimepata hii maji. Tuko na shida kulingana na mambo ya prison. Na saa hii huwezi fanya nayo kazi kwa maana ni mafi kila wakati. Toka zamani sana hii maji ndio tulikuwa tunachota, tunaoga nayo nguo na safisha vyombo kwa nyumba, na sasa hii huwezi tumia. Sasa hii watu wako na cholera area hii. Sauri ya hii maji.
The prison sewer system is a crumbling colonial ruin set up in the 1950s. It was meant to serve the inmates, the prison staff, and their families. Today, the sewer system is bursting at the seams, overburdened by the addition of the Kisumu Medium Security Prison and the Kisumu Women's Prison. In July of 2017, at least 34 inmates at the facility contracted cholera. In 2009, 30 inmates at the prison died of cholera. A prison being an inherently detested institution, pollution problems there are largely ignored. And the residents say so have their complaints.
Tumepiga kilele mara nyingi sana. Tangu hii mafia yaanze kuingia hapa, watoto ambao imezaliwa hata wamekuwa wakubwa. Na tupate usaidizi. Niko na uchungu kwa maana hii maji hata ukileta ng'ombe hawezi kunywa. Akisikia harufu ya nini hiyo hawezi kunywa.
NEMA has also issued a closure notice to Maseno University in the interest of public health. The institution, which failed to comply with an earlier order, does not have a wastewater treatment system. Raw sewage from the university still flows openly into the environment. A notice to remove all illegal connections into River Kisat was also issued to Autotech Solutions Limited. All this slime that drains into the lake allows the toxic algae and other invasive plants to flourish, cutting off the oxygen supply for all other forms of life. And so this prized asset has been deteriorating, and its treasure trove of diversity is nearly gone. But it's not just in Kisumu where the seeds of filth have sprouted. Our investigations took us further up the lake's watershed to its life-giving veins that also carry some deadly contents.